On Sunday, he either becomes the face of the Browns franchise or the turning point that reshapes its entire future.
Size of the football in the pros.
Yeah. It's so funny because Shedeur just left. Like, he literally just left before we turned on the camera.
Oh.
Travis could definitely do that. I mean, he's going to do that, or they shouldn't draft him. Don't do that. And I'm going to make sure of that. Don't draft him. If you're not going to give him an opportunity to play on both sides of the ball. Now, you could be creative. He don't have to do what we did with him here and play every snap. But he's going to just say he's starting the corner.
How could two bad teams, how many wins do the Raiders have? 2?
Yeah.
We have 2.
Something's got to give.
Has a 4-win matchup ever been as massive
I mean, it's
to
amazing.
us?
It's amazing.
I mean, come on. This
My heart is beating to my
gigantic.
chest.
We are going to be
It's
watching
not just my cholesterol.
like it's the Chiefs
so big.
and the Browns in the playoffs. That's
point.
how we're going to be analyzing it.
He knows that there's things that he has to work on and steps that he has to take. But overall, he was just harping on the fact that he's going to lean into whatever Todd Monken has him do, and he's not going to overly stress himself either. But even listening to that answer, for me, I want Shedeur to have a clear idea. Looking at tape from last year, don't just kind of go through the motions. And I'm not saying he's doing this. I'm being colloquial now, just having cute videos for Exos.
Deion Sanders just sent shockwaves through the entire National Football League, not with a tweet, not with a press conference, but with audio. Real, recorded, undeniable audio of an active NFL head coach privately urging the Sanders camp to make sure his franchise lands Shedeur in the 2026 draft. This is the kind of recording that keeps front offices up at night, the kind that has league executives scrambling behind the scenes. It pulls back the curtain and reveals how some of the same voices that publicly questioned Shedeur were privately pushing hard to secure him. And Prime didn't hold it quietly. He released it with intention, with precision, and with the calculated timing of someone who has navigated this league at the highest level for decades.
It's interest. I mean, when they choose us, as a school, as a coach, as a mentor, or whatever they choose you as, you owe them that. I mean, come on, man. This young man helped us become who we are, single-handedly. Now he's won the Heisman, and during every other award that he should have won, a couple that he should have won, he didn't get. But shouldn't you be there for him?
Of course the Browns should start Shedeur Sanders again. And look, the haters, they try to comment, they try to get to me, try to get me to doubt. But I can't unsee the Titans game. I watched Shedeur Sanders throw for 364 yards. I watched Shedeur score 4 total touchdowns, and every other member of the team let him down in that game. And I'm not even going to get too analytical here for a second. Okay, if you know anything about ball, ask any quarterback the difference between having a good offensive line and a bad offensive line.
All right, everyone, welcome back. And I need to be clear from the start. When this story first reached me, I didn't rush to post it. I sat with it, because what I'm about to break down isn't a rumor, isn't an unnamed source, and isn't speculation floating around league circles. It's recorded audio released by Deion Sanders himself. And once you understand what's actually on that recording, and why Prime chose this exact moment to make it public, you'll realize this may be one of the most calculated moves the Sanders family has pulled off yet. But to truly grasp the impact, we have to rewind. The recording is explosive, yes, but it's the final step in a sequence that began months ago. Go back to last year's draft cycle. Shedeur Sanders was coming out of Colorado with film that had serious evaluators intrigued. Strong completion numbers, real pocket composure against Power 5 competition, advanced processing, and anticipation that quietly impressed decision-makers behind closed doors. Yet publicly, the narrative told a different story. Arm strength debates, character whispers, the famous father, shadow, analysts lining up on television to question whether he was truly franchise material. The messaging seemed coordinated, almost mechanical. But while that narrative played out on screens, something very different was happening inside NFL buildings. Away from cameras and draft panels, in conversations that never reached the broadcast desk, coaches were making calls and having discussions that painted a completely different picture of how Shedeur was actually being viewed behind the scenes.
Shedeur seemed to get in trouble was relying on some of the things that we saw going into the draft that he would do as far as moving out of the back of the pocket. And In college, he was athletic enough to do so. But when you have guys, and I understand Myles Garrett is on the same team as Shedeur, but when you have guys like Myles Garrett who are going to chase you down out of the back of the pocket, unless you're Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or even what Drake May has been able to do this year, you want to push up into the pocket. And I think, you saw that on the deep in cut that he hit across the middle. And I think
not through official league channels, not inside the structured pre-draft interview process the National Football League oversees, but privately, directly to the Sanders camp. Coaches who personally studied the Colorado tape weren't seeing the same flaws being debated on television. Behind closed doors, some evaluators reportedly feared their own front offices might let Shedeur slip because of narratives disconnected from on-field performance. One of those private conversations was recorded, and for months Deion Sanders kept that audio in reserve. He didn't release it during the draft, not when Shedeur was selected, not during contract discussions or internal coaching tensions. He waited. And this week, that timing shifted. According to sources familiar with portions of the recording, the voice belongs to a recognizable NFL head coach, someone whose name would immediately register if attached publicly. In the call, the coach's tone reportedly contrasts sharply with his organization's public stance at the time. While the team projected caution about Shedeur's readiness, the private message carried urgency. Where the franchise appeared noncommittal outwardly, the recording suggests strong internal interest. And while public narratives question fit, the coach allegedly conveyed that Shedeur aligned exactly with what he was seeking, expressing concern that outside noise, not football evaluation, might distort the decision-making process.
This is what's going to happen. You got to understand, Travis Hunter has another year eligibility. So if you start the foolishness, he can do that.
Interesting, Prime, because I know you've got plans. I know this stuff is stuff you've been talking about. I know you're the guy that once upon a time was famously brought into an interview room at the Combine, asked where they're in the draft order and they were too low for you, and you pirouetted and walked out of the room saying, "You can't draft me, see ya."
Sources say the tone of that call wasn't casual. It was urgent. They describe it as pleading, with the coach pushing hard for the Sanders camp to help position the process so Shedeur would still be available when his team was on the clock, suggesting behind-the-scenes coordination that stretches the spirit of how the draft is designed to function. And yes, the conversation was recorded. Naturally, that raises legal questions, state consent laws, privacy concerns, potential exposure for both Deion Sanders and the coach on the line. Those discussions are reportedly happening in real time. But beyond legality, the larger impact is already unfolding. The mere existence of the audio has reinforced what the Sanders camp has argued for years, that the gap between public skepticism and private evaluation around Shedeur is significant. Whether the full recording ever surfaces or not, word of it circulating through National Football League circles has shifted the conversation. The timing appears intentional, arriving at a moment when Shedeur's contract dynamics and broader narrative needed momentum. It reframed the discussion, reminded decision-makers that documentation exists, and altered leverage without a single press conference. What began as a shocking leak now feels like a calculated maneuver, one that not only impacts a player's trajectory, but also challenges how quarterback evaluations are publicly presented versus privately discussed across the league.
As we make fun of the Cleveland Browns, click that subscribe button, stop missing out. But how are you feeling? How are you feeling going this week? What do you think is going to happen? Do you feel like Shedeur is going to ball out? Or are you nervous about it? What's your confidence level on Shedeur Sanders here in Week 12 against the Raiders? Brian Hoyer seems like he's very positive going into this week.
I think everybody just needs to take a pause and say, look, we're going to get to see Shedeur with a full.
The coach heard on that recording isn't a fringe voice trying to stir attention. He's a respected decision-maker whose public comments about quarterback evaluation carry real influence. Which means that when analysts cited his outward skepticism of Shedeur as validation for their own doubts, they were amplifying a stance that reportedly didn't match his private evaluation.
Consider the ripple effect of that.
Countless segments, draft boards, and character-based debates were shaped by public positioning that may not have reflected what was truly being said behind closed doors. Shedeur wasn't simply facing criticism. He was navigating a performance of doubt that, according to this revelation, diverged from internal football assessments. And with the release of that audio, Deion Sanders forced that contrast into the open across the National Football League landscape. As for Shedeur's reaction, it has been measured. No public loading, no social media victory laps, no direct callouts, just focus. He allowed his father to make the strategic move while he continued concentrating on preparation, development, and daily improvement. Because the reality he seems to understand is simple. Validation only matters if you're still progressing when it arrives. Headlines will cycle. The coach involved will likely face difficult internal discussions. Media outlets will debate ethics, legality, and implications. But beyond the noise, the core takeaway is this: perception and reality inside NFL evaluation rooms may not always align, and that revelation may linger far longer than the initial shock of the recording itself.
Why would I?
I don't know. Your son could go first overall. Travis Hunter could be.
I got 2 dogs. You don't think I have plans for that? I got a kennel. I got 2 dogs in a kennel right here.
Okay, so
You think I'm going to dress up my kennel and let my dogs play? Hey!
let me just explain to everybody what I'm talking. What did I tell you guys?
And through all the noise, Shedeur Sanders will be exactly where he's always been: on the field, in the gym, preparing. The recording may have shifted the narrative in a dramatic and public way, but the only validation that truly lasts comes when the season begins. The lights are on, and the game moves at full speed against elite competition. That's the stage he's been working toward through every contract discussion, every coaching tension, every public doubt paired with private praise. At the center of it all stands Deion Sanders, who clearly believed timing was everything, holding that audio until it could make maximum impact. Whether viewed as strategic brilliance or calculated risk, the move has reshaped conversation across the National Football League. Now the debate shifts. Was releasing that recording the smartest leverage play possible for Shedeur's long-term position, or did it introduce new political and legal complications within league circles? And what about the coach on the call? Does a private endorsement paired with public skepticism require accountability, or is that simply the reality of how draft dynamics operate? However people land on those questions, one thing is certain: the headlines will fade, but what happens once the season kicks off will ultimately define everything.